In this episode, I'll muse about harmony. It's not about everything being perfect and all matchy-matchy. You can actually harmonize with disharmony. So here we go, episode 208, Harmony. Hi, I'm Karen Rohlf, and welcome to Horse Training in Harmony. This podcast is about you making progress with your horse in a way that you both can love. It's about learning how to move and be in harmony. Because yes, you really can develop a horse to be both athletic and happy. When we show up as our best selves for our horses will show up for us. So, let's get started. This is an episode about harmony, but no, I am not going to sing for you. And I should probably add, you're welcome. So it's about harmony. This is, again, one of those episodes where I'm like, really? I've not done an episode about harmony yet? Because I think a lot about harmony. If you know me, you see that word a lot or hear that word a lot in things that I do. So yay, it gets its own episode on the podcast. Now, one of the reasons I've been especially thinking about harmony is because I have an upcoming happiness and harmony workshop. I did this last year, and it just was so well received and so much fun to deliver that I'm doing it again. So if you're listening to this episode now as it is first released, you can join the Happiness and Harmony Workshop by going to dressagenaturally.net/harmony. We start the series November 18th, 2024. And it's just really cool because we're going to dive into this. And it's really about the concepts of harmony and how they relate to happiness. And as I'll talk about in this episode, and how, I really realized that the concepts and sort of protocols that I use with horses completely apply to life also. So this intersection of personal development and horsemanship is so interesting to me. And so we'll be meeting 4 times, once a week, and you'll get some teaching, then you'll get some homework, and you'll have a week to play with it and dive deep into these concepts, these simple yet profound concepts. And then you come back the next week and we take it to the next level and talk about it some more. Anyway, super fun. dressagenaturally.net/harmony. And the first one starts November 18th. So you might want to register before then. Anyway, so as I was saying, there's really no separation between horses and life, right? So the better we are for ourselves, the better we are for our horses. And our horses are always such perfect mirrors and such perfect reasons for us to learn more about ourselves. Some of you listening might not even be into personal development if it wasn't for your horse, right? We start out by going, I need to solve this horse problem. Oh, wait, it starts in me. And now I need to learn about myself in order to solve the horse problem. So it's all good. Doesn't matter. Horses, life, personal development, horsemanship. Just for me, I think dive into all of it because it's always connected and one will always help the other one, at least in my experience. So if I want to talk about harmony, then, you guys know me. I like to look up definitions of things. So one of the definitions of harmony is the quality of forming a pleasing and consistent whole. I really think that's a cool definition. And another definition is that harmony means in agreement. And of course, there's definitions that actually talk about musical notes. But I wanted the sort of bigger, non-specifically just a music definition of it. So I love that it's the quality of forming a pleasing and consistent whole. And that word pleasing is sort of interesting because beauty is in the eye of the beholder. There's some room for interpretation, right? There's some room for personalization. And, forming a consistent whole, well, there's lots of wholes that can be, WHOLE, that there's lots of different kinds of wholes, like a whole partnership or a whole picture. But like, what is the picture of the whole? A whole what? So I love that in this definition of the word harmony, there's a lot of wiggle room. So I think harmony is actually pretty complex. And this is why, when I started throwing the word around and started thinking about that word more and diving into it, it just is so immensely interesting to me because it is complex. Because harmony isn't just about being perfect or having everything organized in just the exact perfect, evenly spaced rows or something like that. But so often, I think especially in the horse world or maybe the dressage world, when people think about being harmonious with the horse, things start to feel like they need to get perfect. Everything needs to be exactly, lined up perfectly, or you're not in harmony. And even if you do use the musical notes definition or way of thinking about harmony, many different notes can harmonize, right? So it's not harmony if everybody's singing the same note, right? There's 3-part harmony, there's 4-part harmony, etc., and they're all going to be singing different notes. I mean, that's the whole point. And then it gets even more interesting where, like, an echo, there can be a harmony in an echo. So there's this exercise that I do in a lot of clinics, and it's a leading following exercise. And I pair people up and say, okay, one person is the leader and get some sort of simple movement done, and the other person tries to mirror and follow that movement, literally like they're in a mirror. So one person's leading, one person's following. And often when that gets going, if I just let people loose with that, a couple different things can happen. Sometimes people go really slow and it's very fluid. And then other times there's people who are like trying to like trick their partner or like, haha, keep up with this. Anyway, which I think is all interesting, just psychologically. It's just everybody's different, right? And it's really fun to kind of discover how people navigate those instructions of one person leads, one person follows. But at some point, I give the instructions of, all right, one person leads, one person follows. You can do whatever you want, but the goal is harmony. And so that's their instructions. The goal is harmony. And then that changes things. So there's some little shift that changes where if people are making this agreement that they're going to do that same exercise but do it in harmony, it's sort of interesting to see what changes. And it still can be some people going really fast, some people going really slow, some people being methodical, some people changing it up. There's no right way to move in harmony, but something does change, if you do the leading following with the goal of being in harmony. And so that's an interesting shift alone. But still often as I do the simulation, there's a moment where some people are struggling, or like they feel like they can't keep up with the leader, or they're not doing it right, or they're delayed, or, oh no, I didn't notice that. And one of the most common things that gets in the way of this exercise being harmonious or fun, or having it feel like something just that's really hard and disjointed, is the thing that gets in the way is the perfectionism, the fear of doing it wrong, or judging yourself as you're doing it, or wishing the person wasn't moving in the same way because it's annoying to you, or whatever it is. So this like, I can't do it right because fill in the blank is the most common killer of harmony. So if you think about, the definition, then, the quality of forming a pleasing and consistent whole, and we've got one person leading, the other person trying to follow, but, maybe the way it's happening, or someone's like, I'm not doing it right. Oh, I got to practice. All those things, it'll immediately make a shift to not having harmony. So again, even if I say the goal is harmony, often people will assume that means some sort of physical perfection. And then the emotions and the brain and the judgment get in the way. So I think that's a really important thing for you guys to know. I mean, I've done this simulation with hundreds and hundreds of people all over the world, and it's so much fun to do. But this is the absolutely common challenge. And so one of the things then that I'll do is, I'll play with one of the people doing it, and I will let them lead, and then I'll be the follower, and I'll kind of show the difference between I'm following trying to be perfect, or I'm following in a way to create a pleasing and consistent whole, but not necessarily thinking about perfect matchy. And so this is where it gets really cool, because I can echo it, like they can go and then I can go, right? It doesn't have to be simultaneous and synchronized. So they can go and then I can go. They could be moving really in a fast tempo, and I could maybe do half of that. So I'm still kind of matching the beat. I'm just on every other beat. So there's so much room to play and to create somehow that pleasing and consistent whole. And then I let after demonstrating that, then I let everybody loose again to try again. And the degree of laughter, the degree of lightheartedness, and the degree of harmony goes way up immediately that next time that they play. So that's one of the first points I really wanted to make with harmony, is this freedom that's inside of it. There's no picture written in stone somewhere that like you have to achieve this certain thing in life, and then that is the picture of harmony, and if you get it wrong, then you're just wrong. Now, of course, whenever I say stuff like that, I can always picture, like a dressage, to get 15 one-tempies on the diagonal, there has to be some sort of standard and criteria. I'm like, yes, that's details and specifics and skills, then you got to practice. But I still believe that's going to be layered on. That's icing on the cake of this spirit of this pleasing and consistent whole, where there is agreement, right? So between the horse and the rider, if you've got that as your base, Happy Athlete Training Scale, a shout out. If you have that as your base and you have that playfulness, then you can build on and be more and more and more specific, because what do we know? Precision arrives out of the possibilities that playfulness creates. So to think about riding, we can have this image and this ideal and this goal of like merging these like two bodies merging into perfect harmony. But in reality, your bodies are not going to be moving in the same way. I mean, what the horse is doing to walk, trot, and canter is very different than what you're doing in your body to walk, trot, and canter. I mean, it's similar, but like you're not on all fours, right? You're sitting upright. So there's a harmony between that, and that's far from matchy perfect. It's just found a way to be in agreement, found a way to be, to form a pleasing and consistent whole, even though the two parts are very different. Now, I can think about a horse, bucking playfully, My horse, Brave Tom, used to like have a little like bucking across the arena just about every ride. I mean, looking back, I'm like, I wonder how I would evaluate that now, knowing what I know now. But the reality was he'd come up, he was a pretty exuberant, energetic horse. And at some point he would like get excited and puff up and do a little bucking. It wasn't violent. It was more like roly-poly, playful, dolphin-y kind of things. And especially when he was younger, of course. And then that would be it. And we're like, okay, then we go on with our life. And at that point, it just felt fun. I remember like giggling as he'd go bucking across the diagonal, and I would be floating above it, and I used to just laugh, right? So that moment can be harmonious too, right? If it's a horse who's really exuberantly playing, and because he was trained by a kid, I never told him not to do that because I kind of thought it was funny, right? So there's the possibility that even something like that could be harmonious if you're both kind of agreeing that like, yeah, that's just something we do. And on the flip side of that coin, you could be moving, I'll quote, air quotes, air quote alert, moving perfectly as one. Like, let's say it's a highly trained dressage rider, excellent dressage rider on an excellent horse in an excellent moment of physical gymnastic balance and biomechanics and harmony. You could be completely moving as one, but maybe for some reason, either the horse or the rider or both is feeling some fear for something that's, might be about to happen, right? You could be riding a horse in perfect moment, but you're approaching like the spooky corner and you're like wondering and already thinking ahead of what might happen, right? So that could be your brain is now getting out of harmony, right? So harmony is mental, it's emotional, it's physical. And if you're riding around and you're thinking about something that might happen, then it means your attention is on things that are out of this moment, right? You're thinking about, the last time. So you're thinking about the past, and then you're thinking, well, the last time he bucked in that corner. And so this time he might buck in the corner. So you're bouncing your attention from the past to the future, to the past to the future. And you're then going to be out of harmony with this moment. So, and there's, I think, a difference between that and being in this moment while still being alert and poised and ready. So I think this is where it's so cool because it gets so nuanced. How do we stay alert and poised and ready, but without like living in the past and living in the future? And this is where I think the thinking before you're out there doing it, and thinking and being strategic and reminding yourself of things so that then when you're riding, you can really be in that most harmonious moment, which is this moment, right? And not worrying and strategizing while you're riding. Disharmony can also come from like being stuck in an argument, right? So some sort of unresolved conflict, big or small. And horses and life, right? So, and as I said, disharmony can come from having your attention on the past or the future instead of what's happening now. Disharmony can come from physical imbalance, lack of alignment. Disharmony can come from lack of understanding. Disharmony can be confusion. Disharmony can come from a mismatch of emotions. Or a mismatch of emotions to situations. It can be something about like not feeling what you're really feeling. Like, for example, you're pretending you're not afraid when you are afraid, right? So you're still really feeling afraid, But our brains are powerful, and they can often convince us of things that are not actually happening. Or you can like redefine that feeling, like, no, that's not afraid, I'm just whatever. But, deep down, so deep down there's this disharmony, pretending to want to do something when you don't want to do it. Any people pleasers out there? All right. So pretending you're okay when you're not okay. How are you? Fine. No, you're not. And, laughing at a joke that you actually find offensive. Right? So you're mismatching your emotions, right? You're feeling stuff that you're not really feeling, and you're trying to convince yourself or pretend. Maybe you're just acting to save others. But those kind of things, I think we do a lot in society, and we have to be careful, because I think we can tend to practice that too much, and then we accidentally train ourselves that what we're feeling is not what we're feeling. And then if it starts getting, like a big feeling that we have to solve, now it's just so confusing that it's going to make it harder to solve. And so those are kind of like human examples, but you can, I think, see how this all can relate to horses, right? So horses can get stuck in an argument, right? You can get stuck in resistance or brace with a horse, and that can be chronic, it can be ongoing. And then that becomes normal. And that's the real downside of these disharmonies, is that you just get used to it. Oh, he's a bracy horse. Oh, that's an annoying person, right? So you just get stuck. It's like that's just how they are. And that's a real danger. So again, with horses, you can be in disharmony by being out of balance or alignment. We deal with that a lot in dressage. We could be in disharmony by asking horses to submit or to force them through things when they're afraid, right? So we start not honoring the emotions. We start mismatching emotions, like, okay, you're feeling fear, but I'm going to make you act courageous. Right? So we're causing horses to, we're mismatching them or forcing a mismatch in how they're acting versus how they're feeling. They're still just going to feel what they're feeling, but those feelings are going to get more complicated if we do that, instead of going, oh, that's an afraid horse. I'm not going to force that horse to act confident if he's afraid. It can't happen, even with all the equipment in the world, right? So you don't want to create on purpose those emotional disharmonious mismatches. And we can also create disharmonies in horses by not clarifying confusions, right? Same as with people. If we're confused, and then with horses, we'll start using control over communication. So that's sort of one of the red flags of disharmony with me, is like you have to start using more and more equipment, more and more control. It's like, well, there's a big disharmony there, and you're just trying to muscle your way through it. But sometimes disharmony is more subtle, right? Sometimes with disharmony and harmony, it's like just a vibe. Just a vibe, man. And so I don't know what that is, but it's like you can't quite put your finger on it, but you just feel it, right? You can just feel there's like something just not quite right. The same way you can feel the resonance of when there is harmony. Like, this doesn't make any sense, but it just feels right. Like there's something that you're feeling. And so I think we need to know ourselves well enough to know those feelings were feelings and what clues they're leaving, right? So I know my particular feeling of disharmony, this particular like, something ain't quite right there. And I've continued to learn the lesson of, if I don't pay attention to the small one, then it gets complicated pretty quick. And then it gets harder to solve. So you want to get to know yourself and really notice those small disharmonies and figure out what it's trying to tell you. However, asterisk footnote, disclaimer, I think there's one thing we have to be careful about with when we're feeling like, oh, I get the vibe, this is not quite right, especially if it applies to other people or horses, or I guess even situations, because it can cause us to make snap judgments based on, sometimes we'll make a snap judgment based on actual experience and wisdom, but it could just be a judgment. It could be that we're not really seeing the situation. We're just going, oh, that reminds me of fill in the blank. And now you just jump ahead and treat it as if it's fact, right? So in a situation like this, something happened back then, and now we're sure that this is the type of person or whatever horse that would do that exact same thing again. You know in your bones, right? Or you're like, oh, I know that type of situation. That is definitely going to happen again. So that can be intuition, that can be wisdom, or it could just be labeling and categorizing and a snap judgment. And then again, you're not really seeing this moment. You've just gotten a clue, made a decision, and now you're not going to see it anymore. You're like, oh, that is that moment. And you're, again, lost in the past. So this is where it gets confusing, like this feeling of harmony, disharmony. I think probably sometimes you've met people, well, I hope not too many of these people, are like, oh my gosh, I just feel this connection. And then like you find out real quick, like, oh, they're actually horrible and they do mean things. So like, what is that? It's a feeling that reminded you of something and gave you the feeling that reminded you of trust or harmony from the past. So, this is, I think, one of the journeys of life. Like, what am I feeling? What does it mean? Why am I being reminded of this? And then, to feel into this moment and this situation and this horse and this person, and not be too quick to label or to categorize. So I think the first step is always going to be to acknowledge and notice the feeling of disharmony, or harmony. But, harmony just happens if you get rid of the disharmonies. So, if you notice the disharmony, like feel into it. What's going on? Like, what am I feeling? And then just stay there a little bit. Suspend judgment. Scan. Wonder, what are you going to do about this? What could you do about this? And then you can start to get specific. So disharmony can be complex and it can compound easily. But if you get in the habit of finding like that one little piece of the puzzle, is like just find somewhere to start. Right? So of all the layers, it could be just this one disharmony, but because you compounded it and you pretended that it wasn't happening, so then it added another layer, right? And then another layer, and now it's really complex and you're not sure. Is it mental? Is it emotional? Is it physical? Because a physical disharmony sure can turn into an emotional disharmony because you're so out of balance. Now you're scared, and then you fell off, and then the next time you ride, you're remembering that last falling off, and so, the layers. So if you're in that sort of thing and you're like, oh, wow, I'm just now noticing my disharmony, which is actually a compound disharmony that's been there for a decade, what are you going to do about it? Wonder what you're going to do about it, notice it, and then start to get specific. Just list all the things you can think of and just start somewhere. Just get in the habit of finding just one piece of the puzzle. Just get that one. It's somewhere to start. And sometimes that will actually help you get the other pieces of the puzzle. And practice questioning your feelings. That feeling of like, oh, this I know means that's going to happen. Well, question it. Listen to the intuition Say, wow, I hear you. Wow, I'm feeling something. What am I feeling? Am I sure that that's actually relating to this moment? And that's that little piece right at the beginning that I think is so vital to be able to solve these things. And to not make those snap judgments with our horses too. When we feel a sudden disharmony, oh, he needs to submit, he needs to do this, he needs to comply, he needs to obey. Like, maybe not. Like, let's just suspend it for a moment and see. A fascinating thing about harmony is each of our own personal relationships with it. Like, how do we navigate between adventure and the joy of messing around and bumbling through learning new things and experiencing new and inherently uncomfortable situations, and how we navigate between that and the goal of ending up with everything aligned and smoothly blending together. So it keeps coming back to this like lack of perfectionism, the playfulness, the giggling while riding the exuberant, naughty, playful horse. The sense of like, yeah, this is a bumpy road that I decided to go down. So of course, like, I know it's bumpy and it's kind of fun. So is it possible to be in harmony with things that are not going perfectly? Can you harmonize with disharmony? I absolutely think yes. I mean, that happens every time I clean my closet, right? I'm like, I'm going to clean my closet. I'm feeling very harmonious about that idea. And then for like a long block of time afterwards, the whole room is a mess as I pull everything down. That's not a disharmonious moment. I am still in harmony of the big picture of cleaning my closet. What a weird analogy. So it's about zooming out, zooming in. And there's a time for each, right? To zoom out to the big picture. I find it easier to find harmony when I zoom out. I mean, as a life example, if I zoom out, no matter how bad my day is, if I zoom out and I just remember how lucky I am to be alive on planet Earth and to be able to have these human senses to gather information and delight in it, I mean, that feels like why I'm here. And everything else that's a quote unquote problem seems not so bad. Like, that's where I feel harmony if I get into that space. So everything seems harmonious when I'm in that space and allowing myself to feel all the feelings appropriately in flow. Feeling sad when there's something sad. Feeling scared when I'm scared. Feeling love when there's loveliness. Not suppressing, not pretending, not holding on to any one particular emotion and forcing it through. And when I'm not in harmony, when I feel that feeling of not quite rightedness, that's when I might zoom in. All right, take a closer look. If I'm trying to solve it, I'll zoom in. I'll write stuff down. I dig a little. I ask myself questions. I look for as many pieces of the puzzle as I can. I'll ask for other people's eyes on my challenge. In the end, for me, it's the feeling that I'm looking for. There's a feeling of harmony, that pleasant whole, that beautiful resonance, and the playful, messy adventure. So I hope you find this as interesting a subject as I do. I mean, it is Horse Training in Harmony podcast. We got to talk about harmony. And once again, if you're listening to this right now, well, you're always listening to it now, aren't you? If you're listening to this upon its initial release in November 2024, and you want to join me on this happiness and harmony workshop series, I think you'll really enjoy it. Again, 4 weekly meetings. Just go to dressagenaturally.net/harmony. And again, we start November 18th. All right, enjoy.